Our text is from the Gospel of Mark. Mark is the first gospel that we have record of detailing the early life of the faith community that was established by Jesus. It's not the first gospel in the Gospels. Matthew's the first one, but Mark is the earliest one. And Matthew and Luke both draw from Mark when they write their Gospels. And Mark's an interesting gospel because it omits some of the most favorite parts of the holy stuff, like the birth stories of Jesus. Matthew and Luke both put those in, not Mark. Mark just opens up and you get rolling. And I think the whole point of that is that Mark is in a hurry and wants to tell the story and get it out. And sometimes you take your Bible and open it up to Mark and read and start underlining a little word immediately. It's in there over and over again. It's as though there is pressing business. Immediately, the word is repeated. So today we read this wonderful account of Jesus feeding the 5,000. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And see where we can go with this ancient wisdom. Reading from the 6th chapter, the 30th verse and following. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told them all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest for a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. They went away in a boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves have you? Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and of 50s, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave it to his disciples to set before the people, and he divided the 2 fish among them all. And all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of the fish, and those who had eaten of the loaves numbered 5,000. 5,000. This is the holy word of God. All of creation speaks God's holy word, but the scriptures focus that and define it for us. May these words find deep resonance in our souls, and may the truth that they point to live in our lives. Thanks be to God for this holy word. Jesus was an in-the-moment kind of guy. You can read about it in the Gospels and see that that's true. He was not a long-range strategic planner like some people like to be. Not Jesus. If something needed to be done, he dealt with it right there on the spot. You remember the time that the man had the sick daughter, and he sent for Jesus and said, "My little girl is deathly ill. Come and do something for her, please." And Jesus was on his way to the house. And on the way to the house, there was a woman in the crowd that was following him, and she had a physical problem herself and said to herself, "If I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be well." And so she did. And Jesus, the scriptures say, felt the power flow from him into her, the power of his healing spirit. And he stopped. And he said, "Who touched me?" Now, here's the irony of that. There's a little girl who's sick somewhere who needs Jesus to come and come now. But Jesus stops and addresses the woman who has the flow of blood and tells her that her faith has made her well. And then he continues on his journey. The point I make is that wherever Jesus saw a need, he stopped and he did something about it. Whether it was some poor guy sitting by the side of the road of life with his legs withered or his eyes blind, just the scorn of the community, Jesus acted right then and there to get that immobile one back into the game of life. If he came upon a funeral, he wrecked funerals. He did. He was terrible with funerals. I mean, never liked them. He brought the dead back to life. I mean, what do you do after that? You don't have a body anymore. Where do you go? Just go have the reception, I guess, or whatever it is. Whether it was a wine shortage at a wedding, or a crowd in need of a sermon, or a storm at sea, Jesus acted. Love and compassion got spread around, and usually everybody was the better for it. Now, I don't know if Jesus had a personal motto, but if he did, I think it could have well been carpe diem, seize the day, because he was an in-the-moment kind of guy. Do it now was how he lived. And that's what we're thinking about today, living in the now, paying attention to the moment and to the opportunities. That's a pretty fine way to live, if you ask me. And absolutely no one did it any better than Jesus did. And with practice, I think we can do the same. I'm really preaching to myself today, as I said at the opening of our service, because it has been a real blemish in my life that I have missed a lot of things because I was always on my way to do something else. And so in the now, where I was not very focused, I missed what the opportunity was that was presenting itself. And then I came across a book, and I recommend it to you. It's a book by a man named Eckhart Tolle, and its title is simply The Power of Now. And what Eckhart Tolle is teaching in that book is that now is all we have. This moment, right now, is where we are. And we need to focus on that and let its power speak and shape our lives. So you remember the name Burt Jones. He was a pretty outstanding quarterback at LSU, went on to play for the Baltimore Colts. Burt's a good friend of mine. And his older brother and I were in college together, Bill. And the Joneses, have some property up in North Louisiana that they let me have full run of, a little farm. And I would go out and chase cows, and ride horses, and do those kinds of things because I love to do that sort of thing. But I always went in my own car because you never wanted to get caught by a Jones. If you got in their truck, heaven knows where you might end up. You might have thought you were going for 20 minutes somewhere and end up on the other side of Texas. I'm telling you, that's the way they operate. And so Bert one day said something to me that sort of froze in my heart and stuck in my mind, and it was so descriptive of how I had lived my life. He said, Chris is the only man I know who never wants to be where he is. Always on the go, always needing to get to something else, always looking for what is coming over the horizon. There may not be anything terribly wrong with living like that, but you can miss so much in the present. So when love and compassion are the frameworks of your life, you find yourself more focused in the now, on the face that is right in front of you, on the voice that is speaking into your ears. And when love and compassion are the focus of life, you find yourself asking a question over and over again, and that's a simple question. It is, what if? What if this happened? Or what if that was not the case? What if this could be a new kind of way of us doing things? I was in a meeting this week with an 80-year-old retired physician at the hospice of Baton Rouge. He'd invited me to come and sit down with him and another man and the director of the hospice because he said, I have an idea. What if, he said, what if we could decrease the cost of drugs that hospice has to spend every month? And what if we could do that in a way that would help our patients? And so his idea is to start a pharmacy. 80 years old. And he wants to start a pharmacy that will allow us to get drugs at wholesale prices and bring in other players and make this a better world for people who are desperately ill. What if? What if is that kind of question that love and compassion and focus on the now bubbles up and lets us ask over and over. Robert Kennedy is remembered as having said, there are those who look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not, which is really another way of asking, what if? It's as fine a question as there can be, a question that has surely brought many good things into this old world, and a question that we, Unity, congregation, and church, should never let go silence. I wonder if somewhere along the line, our ancestors asked, what if we can actually make fire instead of waiting for another lightning strike? And then some bozo got two rocks and started chipping them together, or a stick on a stick and rubbing them with great force, and perhaps they made a spark and fire was born. Chances are that whoever asked that question was regarded as something of a dreamer. But if it had not been for that questioning early Stone Age fantasy wonk, your bacon wouldn't be nearly as crunchy as it is. And you remember William Wilberforce, a great man of British descent, who asked one day the question that changed the world. He said, what if there was no such thing as slavery? In a world that had come to accept that slavery was just a given. There had always been slaves. Slaves go back to the biblical time. But William Wilberforce said one day, what if there is no slavery? And he began a journey. It took him 20 years. And slavery became outlawed in all of the civilized world. John Kennedy, I think, did the same thing when he huddled with his advisors and asked them, what if we put a man on the moon? And voila, it happened. I believe that love and compassion hold infinite possibilities. And one of the best ways to release the energy of love and compassion is to continually be scanning the moment and asking, what if we did this? What if we did that? It stirs up your cup of creative chowder. It suggests that you cannot take anything or everything for granted. It implies that there are infinitely more options in this life than we can ever imagine. Love and compassion, with these as our guides, we discover that we are living in a universe that is literally exploding with possibilities, infinite possibilities. Oh yes, unity, this is the question. An important question. A question to make the soul moist again with the inspirational water of what might be possible. I'm privileged to have an office downtown in the building that's occupied by the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. And I like living there during the day because it's a stimulating environment. And the people who operate the Baton Rouge Area Foundation are continually breathing that question of what if. And you look around this city and you can see what that question is birthed. Someone in that organization asked a long time ago, what if the old Heidelberg Hotel, that shell of a building downtown, with such historic importance to this community, what if that could turn again into a dynamic hotel, a place where people could rest and eat and enjoy life? Go down and look at it. It's operating today. What if, somebody asked at the foundation, that old auto hotel, they called it, that old hunk of metal that's down there, what if that were turned into a center for the arts? Go and visit the Shaw Center, or go up onto the top floor and have a good meal at Tsunami and look out over the river. It all happened because somebody said, what if? Matt McKay, who is one of the biggest automobile dealers in the United States, and is a friend of mine, and was chair of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation for a time, he asked the question, what if we had a facility in Baton Rouge that could take young people and train them in the high-tech world of auto mechanics? Because it's a different world than it was when some of us were young. You don't get under your uncle's shade tree and just get your hands greasy. You gotta know computers, you gotta know technology. And Matt McKay was struggling to find people with the training to work for him in his businesses. And he said, what if we had a center here? Go out on Ardendale Drive and see what's there now. A facility training young people for a career in automobile technology. What if? And somebody said not too long ago, what if Baton Rouge had a garden spot that the whole community could enjoy, the LSU lakes? And now there's a project underway to revive those lakes, they're dying, and to bring them back. What if? That's the whole of living in the now. What if it's a question that throws open the window when all the doors seem to have shut? It's a question in which all adventure, all exhilaration, all meaning, all honor depends. It's a question that surely fires the motor of evolution. A question that the cocoon must whisper to the caterpillar. The question that molecules recite before bonding. The question that separates that which is dead from that which is living. What if? Now in the world of religion, the question, what if, is a question that offers a mischievous grin and a playful challenge to every dogma and doctrine that you can name, to every popular opinion, to every political stance. A question that irritates everybody who claims to know the mind of God or the meaning of life. Because what if suggests that maybe little buckaroo, you ain't so smart after all. Maybe there are more options out there than you considered. Maybe everything is not nailed down. It proposes that perhaps all the options have not yet been considered. and intimates that there may be something that we've not thought about. In fact, the underlying message of what if is we just might not know it all. And there's more going on in this life than we could possibly ever imagine. I conducted a memorial service yesterday for the life of a dear friend. Her name was Janet Hoffbauer. And Janet knew that she was going to be exiting this life. She had an illness that was slowly taking her away. And so she called me and said, I need you to come by and let's talk about my funeral. Okay, it's not exactly what I wanted to do, but if that's what you need, that's what we'll do. And we had a long and lovely visit, really. And she said, I want you to do my funeral, but for God's sakes, don't do it in the old way. Let some fresh air into the room. Let it be a celebration of life. She said, don't you dare have anybody sing There's Power in the Blood, or the old rugged cross, or How Great Thou Art. She said, get some of that music that the young people live with and play some of that and celebrate life and celebrate me. Because she said, I've lived a good life and I've enjoyed every moment of it. And so we gathered yesterday, not at a church, but at the place where she lived, the place called the Blade, I think it's called, and we celebrated her life. And it ended with her brother standing up and saying, now folks, Janet left enough in her income to throw a pretty good party. And so we got over here a full bar and a lot of food, and you're now to come and eat. It was the best funeral that I think many people had ever been to. Certainly it was a good one for me. We drank and we ate and we laughed and we shared stories. And I stood in the room there and it dawned on me, this is some holy stuff. These people laughing, these people sipping, these people munching. This is some holy stuff. And it was in that now, in that moment, that the fullness of life was to be experienced. What if is a question that cannot be entertained if we're always on our way to something else. What if is a question that demands we will be in the moment. Now, if there's one disqualifier, I think, for being a follower of Jesus, it has to be pessimism. It has to be that attitude that there's nothing new under the sun and that there are problems with no solutions. There are a lot of people going around saying that, saying we can't save our planet. There's always going to be war, there's going to be hunger, there'll be poverty, you can't do anything about that. Greed and power will always run the show. There will always, always, always be poor people in this world. And politics will always be crooked. But there are others, hopefully like us gathered here in this sanctuary today, asking, what if? And therein lies our hope. Admittedly, life is seldom neat. The fastest route between point A and point B may be a straight line, but you hardly ever get to take that route to your dreams. Instead, the road to your dreams is a windy detour full of potholes, washed out bridges, dangerous curves kind of road, all kinds of obstacles that have to be met to keep us from pursuing our dreams. But the good news is that the holy, love, and compassion are our GPS. And that's what we follow in this world as we live this question in the now of what if. What are the possibilities? I guess you've had the experience like I have, having your GPS on, going someplace, and suddenly the lady comes on and says, make a U-turn, make a U-turn. Well, when love and compassion are your GPS, you're going to have to make a lot of U-turns. I certainly have. There was a time when I knew everything there was to know about raising children. I mean, I was man on the spot when it came to raising children. And then I had children. U-turn. There was a time when I knew everything there was to know about being a husband. I was perfect as a husband. And then I got married. U-turn. Love and compassion call us to do and act and be in different ways at different times. Our dream may not look like we envisioned it, but if we keep in touch with love and compassion, I'm here to tell you that dream will be perfect, just as the holy, as love and compassion intended it to be. And maybe that's why Jesus was such a man in the moment kind of guy. He knew that holiness was everywhere. And therefore, wherever he was, it was okay for him to be there. It left him free to do what needed to be done, feed the 5,000, heal the woman, raise the dead, in the now, to have a spontaneity that provided the freedom to change course, to do something unplanned, and to still be the Son of God, because love and compassion were his GPS, always, always. There's a man in my life who's gone on to glory. His name is Steve Benoit, or was Steve Benoit. Steve Benoit was a fine fellow. He worked for the telephone company, and he and his wife adopted a little boy that they named Tanner. And about 2 weeks after Tanner came into their lives, Steve began to experience some sensations in his body that didn't make a lot of sense, a weakness that was perplexing. So he went to the medical people, and the tests were done, and the diagnosis came back, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, a fatal disease. Just become a father with a 2-week-old child and that diagnosis. Well, as we know from that disease, in some cases it acts very swiftly, and in others it seems to take longer. But in Steve's case, it was fast. And he was deteriorating almost before your eyes. And he called me one day and he said, "I'd like you to go fishing with me. Let's go on a fishing trip." Now, I like to fish, but I'm a busy man. And I said, "Steve, I'd love to go, but I don't have time to go." And about 2 months later, I did Steve's funeral. I can't remember to this day what it was that kept me from going fishing with him. But I regret and lament in my spirit that I didn't take that opportunity to live in the now. What if we were fully present to one another? We really, really tried to hear each other. We really, really looked into one another's face and saw the beauty that each life is. We really, really were intentional about love and compassion being our guiding force in all moments. What if? Well, the world might be just a little bit better. Life would certainly take on a different hue. Jesus lived that in every instance, every time he was present. And what a difference he made. Let the Christ in you be that presence in this world. With your GPS of love and compassion, and asking that question, you can be a revolutionary for the best things in life. What if? What if? Give it a try. See what happens. Well, that's about what I know today. And now we're going to sing a song that sort of communicates some of this. Right Here, Right Now is the title of the song. It's on your sheet that you were handed in the opening of the service. So let's take it. Let's stand and Brother Jude lead us on. Right here, right now.